I'm going to pretend like I'm interested in what you're saying.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool.
It's going to be a strain.
Let's go. All right. Yeah, see, Kyle, it's because of what Jesus said right here. And see, that's the nice thing about the Bible. And see, if you're someone who's, kind of a nihilist, the Bible actually might be good for you because it solves the problem of, you're a piece of shit, but that's kind of the point. You kind of need Jesus to not, be a piece of shit. Heretic's coming out,
It's,
directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. But Heretic's
It looks
coming
really
out.
cool.
It
looks
does look really good.
interesting. I love the sort of escape room vibes from the trailer.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. Two young missionaries become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on a door of the diabolical Mr. Reed. Trapped in his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. Very interesting.
There you go.
It's going to be a test of faith.
A24.
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 They know what they're doing.
Yep.
They seem to get it. They seem to get it.
They seem to get it. I drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
All right. Go see it. Heretic, coming out in November.
I think he's wearing a sweater in the trailer.
And just spectacles and sweater. What more would you want?
So in honor of this new interesting looking film coming out that tackles religion and horror, we thought we'd talk a little bit about religion and horror.
Welcome to Jake and Kyle's Spooky Good Time. Welcome to episode number 1, Religion and Horror. What will we be talking about today, Kyle?
Only exciting things, I'm sure.
We'll be talking about the original Wicker Man. We'll be talking about the First Omen. We'll be talking about Frailty, and we'll be talking about Signs.
So first off, why are we talking about religion and horror?
Why are we talking about religion and horror? That's a good question.
I think horror movies, what I love about them, besides watching people die, is just that you can explore ideas through this genre lens.
I know what you're saying. This is our first episode, and to talk more generally about horror as a genre, it's probably what I would argue to be the most malleable, versatile genre that exists. I mean, I know genre categorization in general is kind of just like bullshit. It's like it's just kind of like marketing essentially, right? It's like it's ways to market movies to people, find like an audience and easily be able to market something to them, right? Based on the history of that audience is like, whatever appeals to them. So it's kind of like, genres are bullshit, but here we are, have a podcast dedicated all just to one genre of things. But I think it's the most...
Well, we're sellouts.
So. We're sellouts. Yeah. Easy marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's the most malleable, like versatile genre that there is when it comes to like exploring different ideas, different types of characters. I like to, not to get too Jungian about it or anything, but
please do.
I think it allows us to dig deep into the psyche, the deep underbelly of the human subconscious and conscious and collective subconscious, right? And all those fancy words just to say that I think it helps us air out our bad laundry, essentially. All the stuff that we don't feel comfortable talking about normally in conversation.
And what do you think it is about religion that lends itself so well to the horror genre? Because we've seen, religion and horror it's just been a constant theme with, The Exorcist, The Omen, Saint Maud, some of the films that we're going to talk about today, like The Wicker Man.
horror is one of those places where we can discuss things that normally make people uncomfortable at normal table conversations. So we can, and religion, I feel like, is obviously one of the most disagreed upon topics in all of humanity, one of the most convoluted. It's a dangerous conversation to have sometimes with certain people. So that's why I think it makes it interesting, because it's almost socially accepted in horror to be able to explore anything. And religion is just, it's one of those things that's very complicated, complex, and, you know, there's a lot of cultural borders because of different religions. And I don't know if I'm making sense, but
I think that makes sense.
that makes sense, yeah.
Religion is such an evergreen theme in horror, maybe because of the unknown aspect of religion.
Yeah.
You know, because it deals with the supernatural realm. You know, it deals with the unknown. It deals with these forces that are outside of our control.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's terrifying.
Yeah.
You know? And there's the idea of the fear of God. Even if you're a devout person, you are in fear of God because of his power, basically.
Yeah, no, the fear of God is a core tenet to all major Abrahamic descending religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam as well. Fearing God is kind of the whole point of the Old Testament, and it's one of the main core tenets of the major world religions. I think you're tapping into something interesting, and, you know, I think that helps lead us into Wicker Man, which is, this movie is very interesting. By the way, even though I've been a horror fan like my whole life, I watched Wicker Man for the first time just to talk about it today, which is like...
What did you think?
I loved it. It's a horror film with no scares in it, and yet it couldn't be more absolutely emotionally dreadful to watch. And talking about cultural boundaries that I kind of was saying the religion sometimes creates, this movie, the entire thing is about the cultural boundary and disconnect between this main character, Sergeant Neil.
Yeah.
So Sergeant Neil is pretty much him and like this entire cult, and is it Lord Summerisle?
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah, Lord Summerisle. There's this disconnect culturally between him and Lord Summerisle and his entire convent, or whatever you know, cult, whatever you want to call them. And so it's interesting because usually when you see religion and horror, I feel like there's one religion in particular that's being discussed, or one critique about religion in general happening. While I think this is more of a general critique of religion overall, I think it's interesting how it uses specifically Christianity and also paganism. They chose the two seemingly most opposite religions of one another. I mean, I'm not a pagan expert or anything like that, but I mean, if Christianity is in a moral way trying to subdue the base instinct desires within you, it feels like paganism is almost trying to be a positive celebration of your base instinct and desires. So it's interesting in this movie to like watch those two things collide. And I know like Sergeant Neil, we're supposed to be on his side and he's the protagonist, so like we empathize with him and his point of view. Looking back on the film, he's kind of a bastard.
He's got a stick of his butt.
Yeah. He's an outsider coming into their town.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying they don't have problems, because based on, you know, looking at through our cultural lens,
unorthodox, for sure.
looking through our cultural lens, they're pretty weird, you know.
Yeah.
But like if you're trying to look at it from the point of view of this community, he is an outsider coming in, trying to force his own perspective on them constantly, every step of the way.
Yeah.
And I think that fits him as a character, and it's interesting how it fits this theme of religion in horror, because religion, while it should be, in my opinion, in its best form, should be a great source of meaning and purpose in your life and a foundation for good morals, it can sometimes be warped by a person like Sergeant Neil, who uses their religion as a justification, their own pride and ego.
You know, the interesting thing about him is he just seems so miserable the whole time, because he's just put in uncomfortable situation after uncomfortable situation where he's affronted by all of these strange beliefs to him. And obviously they murder him at the end. You know,
Spoilers,
spoiler alert.
alert.
Oh, shit, spoiler alert.
Maybe we should say in general, this is not a spoiler-free discussion about this.
There's no spoiler warnings going forward.
No spoiler
It's
warnings.
Lots of spoilers.
Lots
now.
of spoilers for the entirety of this podcast live.
Spoiler alert. He gets killed.
Yeah.
But besides that, they seem to be pretty happy, easygoing people.
They're just vibing.
They got catchy songs. I love the music in this
The
movie.
music's fantastic, yeah.
It's great. All of the songs are great. I love Willow's song.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one she sings to him through the wall.
Yeah.
You know, I love the Maypole song.
In the woods there grew a tree, and a fine, fine tree was he. And on that tree there was a limb, and on that limb there was a branch, and on that branch there was a nest, and in that nest there was an egg, and in that egg there was a bird, and from that bird a feather came, and of that feather was a bed.
I love how hypnotic that is.
Yeah, and to just add really quick, like to the conversation about the music, is I like that the music never tries to overbearingly try to just be scary. The music's not trying to tell us, oh, you should be scared right here, right?
Yeah.
No, it's more of a direct reflection of who the characters believe they are, what they believe their community's about, right? So it's almost has an ethereal beauty to it.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah,
music.
it's like it's
think
not really scary music, you know.
It's a beautiful, feel-good movie that ends with a man being burned to death. Yeah. Also, when he finally starts singing, he's off key. You know,
That's a good point.
It made me feel a lot less bad about him being burned to death. If he had come out with a big number at the end, I would have felt worse.
I would have. Maybe the Nick Cage movie would have surpassed this one if they had had a wonderful musical ballad at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all it was missing.
Yes.
Maybe that's all they needed.
It might have been.
I love what you're saying about the music, and it's amazing how it directly reflects the community.
What does this film say about religion? What does it say about belief?
I mean, if I'm looking in the broad sense of what it's trying to say, I think it's trying to say something about, it's saying something about the problem with faith. And what I mean by the problem with faith is that faith can be a fantastic thing. It could be a soulfully enriching thing in the sense that it can help you dedicate yourself to something larger than yourself. It can help you dedicate yourself to a set of principles that are difficult to stick to, right? Faith can be such a positive, good force, but also the problem with faith is that it can be such a positive force, but it can also be manipulated, or even not even manipulated necessarily by an outside force, but we can have self-delusion. But I think we should pivot into Frailty, since it's kind of thematically connected in the sense of what happens when you take faith to the extreme, right?
Yes.
Or like what
Bill Paxton was in both movies.
And Bill Paxton was in both movies?
Yeah.
Where is he?
He played the goat at the end. He's not in it.
He's not in the movie.
No, he's not in it.
I was like, wait, what?
It would be even better than, wouldn't it?
It would be even better. Bill Paxton, who directed and starred in Frailty, which if you've never seen this movie, go watch it now.
By the way, how was the drink? We didn't talk about this.
This pumpkin ale, coffee pumpkin ale is fantastic. It's so fantastic that I've just been slamming the bottle down on my leg because I finished it like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It was really good. This reminds me of Guinness, but with a more white girl in it, more fall-time white girl in it. I like it.
It's like a pumpkin spice beer, beer, coffee beer. It's good.
I think it's great. I mean, it was great. It's gone now, but I'm going to keep slamming it on my leg until we're done with this episode.
Yeah.
So
yes,
let's talk about Frailty. So Bill Paxton, who is also I wrote down the characters' names because I'm bad with characters' names, but he's just credited as Dad Meeks.
Yes.
Daddy. Just Daddy Meeks.
Daddy Meeks.
That's him. That's him. Papa Meeks. Papa
Yes.
Meeks. And then you have Daddy Meeks. Let's lightly explain this to the people. Spoilers, of course.
So people who haven't heard of this fucking movie.
Yes, because I feel like this is probably the most under the radar
Wicker Man,
one.
people have heard of it at least.
People know. It's been out for like, what, 50-something years now?
Yeah.
Yeah, people know. But
Frailty's only been out for like 25 years now.
Yeah. So, Daddy Meeks. played by Bill Paxton. You have Fenton, who I don't know what actor plays him, but a wonderful young actor, as well as Adam. You got this family. They're growing up in the Deep South.
This
right?
is Texas. Texas in the 1970s.
Texas in the
And
1970s.
what happens is the father, played by Bill Paxton, believes that an angel is sent from God who instructs him that he must destroy demons.
As one does.
This is a, how would you call it, a Southern Gothic story?
Yeah, Southern Gothic, for sure.
And it's told from the perspective of the now adult Fenton Meeks. Mm-hmm. Except, spoiler alert, it's not Fenton.
It's Adam.
It's Adam.
It's Adam. Mm-hmm. Big twist.
Yes, big twist.
Big twist.
I really hope that people aren't pissed at us for just talking about all this and spoiling it.
We gave a spoiler warning. I think.
Anyway, they had a split second to turn it off.
I know they did.
This film has an interesting perspective on religion. What do you say?
It does, yes. It does, because it feels like a straightforward critique of blind faith, right, in religion. Blind faith and using one's religious views to justify some horrible actions, right?
That's how it seems at the beginning.
That's how it seems. That's how it seems, right? It feels very straightforward.
Yeah.
Until you realize...
And it works great that way.
Yes, and it does. It does. It works great that way. If that's all the movie were, it would be fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But the big twist, because we're led to believe that the Daddy Meeks is delusional, having delusions of some sort.
Are you afraid? Of what?
You?
Only demons should fear me. And you're not a demon, are you?
And that Fenton is the only reasonable, and he's the only empathizable
and
character.
heroically puts a stop to Daddy Meeks's
Yes.
murders by killing his father.
Axing him in the chest, right? Yeah. So what's interesting is that, yes, it just feels like a straightforward critique, because you have Daddy Meeks, who's like sort of seems delusional, seems like he might be seeing things. And then you have Fenton, who seems like the only reasonable, empathizable one in the family.
Who's like, this isn't right.
This is not okay.
Going on is,
why are we hacking up random...
Adam's all in on
people.
it. He loves it.
He
loves the hacking
Adam loves
and
it.
slashing.
Yeah, Adam loves it.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's a bit of a suck up, though.
I guess so. Fenton's the only seemingly reasonable one until, spoiler alert, the big twist in the end is that part of Daddy's delusions is that the angel tells him his own son, Fenton, his eldest son, is a demon in disguise, right? Until basically in the end we realize he was.
Yeah.
he was a demon. He was a demon.
It's not ambiguous.
It's not.
He was a demon.
He was a demon. And Daddy Meeks and Adam are the right hand, or is it left hand? I can't remember which one does the punishment.
Right
of
is
God.
good.
Right is good, yeah. Whichever hand it is, the punishment
so
of
the
God.
left hand is the sinister hand. Because sinister comes from the Latin word for left.
I believe you.
Good, thank you. I appreciate it.
Essentially, what we find out is that Fenton was a demon.
The whole film feels very Old Testament. You know?
Absolutely.
It's like, what was the story in the Old Testament when there were these kids? God, we should look this up and add this in. We sound smarter. Maybe we can do it right now.
I like it, but I like being messy. This is fun.
I don't. It's humiliating. There were these kids. Jacob, look it up on your phone.
Okay.
There were these kids that were making fun of some prophet, and God sent a big bear to maul them to death.
Justified?
Yeah, because they were making fun of him. Jacob, what's that story? Why don't you read that to us?
I'm getting to it. I'm
so glad you should bring the Bible every episode.
It's here. It's here. So 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 19 to 25. Now the men of the city said to Elijah, behold, the situation of the city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad and the land is unfruitful. He said, bring me a new bowl and put salt in it. So they brought it to him. Then he went to the spring of water and threw salt in it and said, thus says the Lord, I have made this water wholesome. Henceforth neither death nor miscarriage shall come from it. So the water had been wholesome to this day according to the word which Elisha spoke. He went up from there to Bethel, and while he was going up the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go up, you bald head. Go up, you bald head." And he turned around and he saw them. He cursed them in the name of the Lord, and 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys.
You're right over there.
From there he went. This is not funny. From there, this actually happened. This is not funny. But from there he went on to Mount Carmel, and thence he returns to Samaria. 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys. 42.
Yeah. Because they called him Baldy.
The Chad Old Testament God.
That was the demiurge.
Yeah. The demiurge. Oh,
but anyway, that's what I mean by this film being Old Testament.
If
It's
this
that
makes
kind
sense.
of God.
It's that kind of God.
When God wasn't chill.
When God, yeah.
When God lost his chill. People are awful. I'm going to drown the world in a giant flood.
If I made humans too, I would look at all of Earth and I'd be like, what the fuck did I do? What was I thinking?
I feel like God is like the kid with the fire ant colony that gets bored with it and just dumps it out, causing a fire ant infestation. But the thing I liked about Frailty is that it explores the horror of divine power.
Yeah. It's like a film that's just honestly so unique that I can't even compare it to anything else, really. I really can't think of another film that feels similar to this one. It's a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should.
Speaking of wonderful experiences, Signs. Yeah, let's talk about Signs. It's an interesting movie because a lot of people dismiss it these days.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people dismissed it when it came out, and they still dismiss it now. And I am going to go ahead and say it's my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's my favorite. Everyone likes to mention, is it Unbreakable?
There was The Sixth Sense also.
Sixth Sense also. Like everyone mentions
one.
those 2 movies as his masterpieces, but I love Signs. It's interesting because we talk about 2 films prior to this talking about the dangers of blind faith or the fears and the scariness of an Old Testament type God, right? A vengeful God. And then here you have Signs, which is definitely the most positive view on religion out of all 4 of these movies that we're talking about today.
Yeah. Signs seems to endorse blind faith in a way.
It does.
Yeah.
What I like about it is that where a lot of these other films, the arc is leading into showing you how blind faith can be so damaging and how an all-powerful God is probably an evil God.
Yeah.
Evil actions and the evil things that happen in the world means that God must be evil. This does that backwards in the sense where you have a character who used to be a reverend, right?
Who experienced tragedy.
Who experienced tragedy,
Yeah.
who experienced tragedy so intensely, spoiler alert, losing his wife. And so you have this character who experiences tragedy, and so he's given up on God. He used to be a reverend. He's given up on God now. There is no God, and if there was, God doesn't care. God's evil, right? God doesn't care. If God were good, why would he allow my wife to get hit by a car, pinned to a tree, and then die such like a unceremonious, ungraceful death, right? And then
the demiurge.
The demiurge, right? Yeah, so he buys into that. If there's a God, he's evil. One of my favorite parts of the film, one of my favorite scenes is when he's on the couch with Meryl and they're trying to be quiet, talking to one another.
Yeah.
And he tells Meryl there's 2 kinds of people, basically. I'm going to butcher this, but because I don't remember it.
Please butcher it.
I don't remember it exactly, but...
Do you want to look it up?
No. We're going to do this based on memory and alcohol alone.
People break down into 2 groups. When they experience something lucky, group number 1 sees it as more than luck, more than coincidence. They see it as a sign, evidence that there is someone up there watching out for them. Group number 2 sees it as just pure luck. happy turn of chance. I'm sure the people in group number 2 are looking at those 14 lights in a very suspicious way. For them, this situation is a 50-50. Could be bad. Could be good. But deep down, they feel that whatever happens, they're on their own. And that fills them with fear. Yeah, there are those people. But there's a whole lot of people in the group number 1. And they see those 14 lights. They're looking at a miracle. And deep down, they feel that whatever's going to happen, there'll be someone there to help them. And that fills them with hope. See, what you have to ask yourself is, what kind of person are you? Are you the kind that sees signs, sees miracles? Or do you believe that people just get lucky? Or look at the question this way. Is it possible that there are no coincidences?
Okay.
He tells Meryl
People can look it up at
There's two
home.
kinds of people. There's people who look to the world, see these random sets of events, and they see signs. Signs that allude to a greater being, a greater purpose on this earth. He said, but then there's other people who understand that these are just random occurrences, or believe they're just random coincidences, right? Yeah, coincidences. He specifically cites the moment that his wife died, and he tells Meryl, you know what she told me? She said, swing away, Meryl, swing away, right?
And he discounted it as her imagining she's at a game or something.
Yeah,
like
he
that.
said it was her brain firing and shooting out a random memory, right? Which was seeing Meryl at a baseball game, telling him to swing away. And that's how he discounts it, as that in that conversation. He says, and that's all it is. It's just a coincidence, pretty much. And by the end of the film, and the reason why a lot of people talk down about this film is that they say, oh, well,
there's water on Earth. How did they not know to?
Yeah,
how did they not know that?
Yeah, so it's like people discount this film because they say, "Oh,
it's an alien invasion." They never said that they're invaded by smart aliens.
Exactly. People discount it because they say, "Oh, it's how convenient. They're allergic to water. It burns their skin like acid." How convenient. The kid his son, his lungs close up because he has asthma.
Yeah.
Oh, how convenient. How convenient for the plot. That's what people like to discount it as. But
that's the whole point.
That's the whole point. The fucking point. It's like, if you look at what Mr. M. Night is trying to say, he's a religious person himself. I think Hinduism is the religion he I believe that's his religion, but I think that's it. He believes in a God, essentially.
Well,
he believes that everything happens for a reason. There's a purpose through this movie, especially, obviously, because it's shown that this reverend.
I think it would be hard for somebody who doesn't believe in anything to write this movie.
To make this movie, yeah, absolutely, exactly. And so you have this reverend who goes from. He was a reverend at one point. Now he doesn't believe in God at all. He believes there's just coincidence, random occurrences, and oftentimes that's tragic. And then he's disproven by all of these things because the water's there, which is not a convenient plot point, but essential to the theme of the film. His son's lungs close up because asthma. I have asthma. It's one of those things that might seem like this is just a burden. This is just a negative physical attribute that I have to deal with. But in this case,
it saved him.
So it's like
of that, and it's something that would be unforeseen.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I like about this movie is that it embraces the mystery.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of addressing the problem of the film, why did bad things happen, in a direct way, it's embracing the mystery of God's existence.
Yeah.
And the way that God works in the world.
Signs. It's not just about the cornfields. It's about God, too. Believe it or not. Shall we pivot now into our final film?
I guess
do you have some last thoughts on that one?
Nah.
Okay.
It was a good movie. I love it. I'd love to watch it again.
I know. I love Signs. Let's pivot into the First Omen, which I think
Nobody watched that movie, by the way.
The First Omen or Signs? No,
The
everyone
First
watched
Omen.
Signs. Yeah.
First Omen. People
Yeah.
watch Signs, but First Omen, sadly, not a huge success at the box
Yeah.
office. People didn't go out to see it.
Yeah.
I think it was a shame.
I think that is a shame too. Maybe it's because
Why don't you
it's-
tell us a little bit about the First Omen, since not as many people have seen this movie?
There's a scene where a demon hand comes out of a prosthetic vagina. I mean, within the story world.
Was that your biggest takeaway, Jacob?
That was my biggest takeaway. I mean, from within the universe of the film,
So,
it's just a demon coming out
what
of a hand coming out
is-
of a vagina. But
What is the plot of the First Omen?
what you have is you have Margaret, who is going to essentially make her vows.
So she's an orphan, right?
She's an orphan. She's an orphan.
She was in a Catholic orphanage.
She was in a Catholic orphanage, yes.
and
Catholic
she's
orphanage.
decided that she wants to be a nun.
She's decided she wants to be a
As,
nun. I don't know what kind of
and
nun.
when
I
does
think
this
there's a
take place
specific
in the 70s, 60s. I don't know,
something like that.
something like
70s.
that.
I think it's 70s because
yeah.
it's supposed to be a prequel to the first film, which takes
Nothing
place.
takes place in the 60s. It's usually the 70s.
Yeah, 60s. Wow. Boring.
Yeah.
Give me the 70s.
Just like Frailty, we didn't connect it. Frailty was in the
Yeah.
70s too.
But essentially, you have this character Margaret, who is an orphan, who grew up in the Catholic Church as an orphan.
She's got kind of a spotty memory, though.
Yeah, she has a spotty memory, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't really know where she came from before that.
Yeah,
And,
some of those early memories are scrambled.
scrambled a little bit. Yeah. She travels to Italy, right? Yeah, she travels to some part of Italy.
I think it might be Rome, maybe.
Or yeah, some
you
some part in Rome or something.
know,
It feels like they're
where the
slightly
Vatican
outside.
City is.
Yeah, it
you
feels
know?
like they're slightly outside of the city in that little orphanage area that she's working
Yeah.
at. Anyways, she's set to make her final vows to the church, which basically means she's vowing she'll never.
She marries Jesus.
Yeah, essentially, she's
Yeah.
married to the church. She'll never have any relations outside of that,
Yeah.
romantically or anything like that. It's a big choice. It's a big decision, and so her roommate encourages her to let's go out and party and have one fun night.
I can do this. Tell me, have you ever been to a bar? No. A disco? No. Anything at all? Because your whole life you wanted to give yourself only to him, right? Look, I know it's scary coming out from under the habit, but look at you. You're a very beautiful girl, Margareta. And you have to understand that about yourself. If only to know what it means to give it up.
That's the stereotypical of what a bachelor or bachelorette party is, which is let's go sleep with someone else before we get tie the knot permanently.
Yep.
She gets drunk for the first time in her life, and she wakes up in her bed, and she doesn't know what happened the night before. Her roommate kind of says, "You were naughty," and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? She says it better than I just did, but
I can't think anybody would say it better than you just said.
But she says, you were naughty last night. I'm proud of you, basically, right? And she's like, what did I do? She has all this guilt, Catholic guilt. You can't have
What
a
if
film
this was the only
about
way
Catholics.
people have
About
heard of
Catholic
this
guilt.
film? It's just us rambling about. So
Go watch the movie.
So
Don't
there's,
rely on
there's
us to tell you
people
what it's
in the
about.
church trying to get the Antichrist to become
Spoiler
born
alert.
in
Yeah.
this world, and they
And yeah.
want her to be the vessel
Yes,
for that.
because spoiler alert, she is Satan's child.
According to this film, Satan
Yes.
needs to procreate with its own offspring to create the Antichrist. So
Antichrist, 'cause
she's not the Antichrist. She's the anti-Mary.
Trigger warning. Well, there's SA involved. You know what that stands for, right? Yeah.
Yes, I
Yes,
do.
yes,
Jacob,
so-
thank you.
Sorry.
Inappropriate things happen in this film. It's an
Inappropriate.
R-rated horror movie.
Tragic things.
Yes.
And so
Make what you will of that.
I don't really, it's interesting how SA is
abused in
horror, the horror
movies,
genre, abused
in a
in a very untaste.
Saying it's about taste gives people the impression it's from a moral standpoint, but it's just like it's tacky.
Yeah, it's very
Sometimes,
tasteless. It's
tacky,
very tasteless.
tacky.
Yeah, it's very tacky, very tasteless. It's
This
exploitative.
This didn't feel
in a
that
bad,
way, though,
very
to
bad
me.
way. No, it didn't, and it's because I think what made it even more emotionally effective too is that it didn't focus on showing the depiction of it as much as it focused on showing the emotional, horrifying, suffocating feel of what
it felt earned.
Yeah,
it felt earned, and it felt strangely respectful, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if there's ever a respectful way to depict SA, this felt. It
wasn't taking it as it wasn't using it as a cheap trick.
Yes,
basically,
and it was
treating it seriously.
I will say, it's probably this. A lot of the horror movies that depict SA that are very, very tasteless and exploitative are often directed by other male directors. Yeah. And in this case, we have a female director who I think brings a profoundly emotional female perspective to like a horrific event like that.
There was empathy in
a lot of empathy
in the film. This woman who wants to devote herself to the church. Mm-hmm. There's demonic forces. There's people out there who are trying to bring about the birth of the Antichrist. What does this film say about religious belief? What makes this film interesting to you in that?
So what makes this film interesting to me is that it both feels like a critique of organized religion in a lot of senses.
And how's that?
And because, spoiler alert, excuse me.
Goes in tight.
Thank you. Spoiler alert, the group who is trying to bring about the Antichrist and the end of times is the Catholic Church itself, or at least this
part
sect
of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, this part of the Catholic Church.
We got to mention that so we don't get sued.
It's not the Catholic. It's not like coming from the Pope.
Why are they doing that?
It's coming from a cardinal.
Why are they doing that?
They're doing that because essentially they look at the world and they think everyone's turned away from God. Essentially, the whole world is turned away from God. No one believes in like the traditional beliefs of good and evil. No one goes to church anymore. It's essentially about church attendance numbers.
Yeah,
that's pretty much their motivation. You would think that maybe they're evangelicals, not Catholic.
Yes.
If they're worried about their church attendance numbers more than anything. But essentially that's what it's about, is they're saying we need to bring more people to the church. The way to do that is to create a great evil in the world. Because they're sort of they believe there's evil.
They're accelerationists.
Yeah, they're accelerationists. They believe there's evil in the world, but they believe the evil that exists now is so under the radar that it doesn't drive anyone to church anymore. And so they want to create a great evil, the Antichrist,
to bring people together,
to bring about the end of the world, because they believe that'll bring more people to the church.
So
essentially,
basically, the Antichrist is an inside job.
Yes,
just like JFK. Anyway. Yes. And so, essentially it's an inside job. And it's important to note, like you said, it's a part of the Catholic Church. It's not the entirety of the Catholic Church. We even have what I would consider to be actually a positive religious figure in this, otherwise a movie that's a critique on organized religion, which is Father Brennan. Dagmar.
That's his character name
in Game of Thrones?
In Game of Thrones, yeah. So Father Brennan, he's the
dad in The Witch.
Yeah, the dad with the voice in The Witch. I mean, I know I did a Mel Gibson impersonation before, but I'm afraid like my vocal cords would just like
that guy's got the voice
fall out of my throat if I tried to go that deep.
My name is Father Brennan.
That guy has an amazing voice, but Father Brennan. I would consider him kind of a positive religious figure. He acts as a nice counterpoint to these otherwise really terrible people.
I appreciated that in this film because, a lot of, especially genre films, they're not always known for their nuance.
Sometimes it'll be very one note.
Yeah, exactly.
A one-dimensional critique.
If they're attacking an idea they're making a straw man argument, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
And I like that they had that nuance in there of having this character who is a true believer and hasn't been corrupted by this renegade group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. He hasn't been corrupted. And in fact, not only has he not been corrupted, but he's actively fighting against it, which is very uplifting to see. Like you said, sometimes there's just this one-dimensional perspective or critique on religion and horror and stuff like that. But in this case, we have a nice counterpoint to the critique that's happening, which the critique that's happening is a good critique about organizations, particularly ones of like a religious dogma, can essentially just manipulate things and be very corrupt and, you know, can use other people for their own benefit, and they'll cover up anything in order to get away with what they want to, right?
I think there's some kind of interesting, not to get into politics here, but I think there's an interesting kind of parallel between the mentality of the accelerationists in the First Omen and the way that a lot of people think about politics these days is that I'm right, and therefore the ends justify the means.
Thank you for joining us on Jake and Kyle's Spooky Good Time.
I'm Jake.
What?
He's Kyle.
He stole my name.
This is the first episode, and we established that, so you can't change it now. You
I'm
can't
Jake.
change it.
I like my name. I'm Jake. You're Kyle. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Jake and Kyle's Spooky Good Time. We'll see you in the next episode.
This rap out is longer than Return of the King.
That's it. I'm just walking out.